Hello, I'm Luke Ryan and welcome to Masters of Cinema Marathon number 1, the first in the this huge epic mega series. If you want to hear me talk about more about what this series is going to be, go check out the introduction that was posted before this video. But to sum it up very briefly, this will be my marathon, my journey of watching and reviewing the first 100 Blu-rays in the Massive Cinema collection. And of course we are starting with spy number 1, Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Now, I'm going to break up these videos into certain sections. First I'll talk about the film, then I'll talk about the Blu-ray, then I'll talk about the special features, and then I'll round it up with my final thoughts. So, first of all, the film itself. Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans was released in 1927, was directed by F.W. Murnau, who was a German director in the silent era who made some fantastic films you might have already heard of, such as Nosferatu, The Last Laugh, Faust, many great films, and he was a brilliant director. I'm a big fan of his films. And in 1926 he went over to California, he went over to Los Angeles to make American films, and this was his first American production with Fox. And it came out in 1927, as I already said. It was very successful. I'm not sure about financially, but certainly critically it was acclaimed. People loved it, and it gave him a lot of power with his next film, Four Devils. But this is also notable for being the first film to kind of win the Oscar for Best Picture. The first ever Academy Awards ceremony took place in 1929, honouring the films that had been released in 1927 and 1928. And this got the award for most unique and artistic production, which is kind of best film. But there was another best film award that was handed out that night as well for best production or best film production. I'm not sure exactly how they worded it, but that is what they now consider kind of canon in terms of which was the best picture. What film was it? Well, you're going to have to wait a long time to hear me talk about it, but it's in the Massive Cinema collection. Either way, this won an Oscar for most artistic production, and I couldn't think of a more appropriate award for it to win. It also won, or in fact the actress who plays the lead female role in the film, she won the Oscar for Best Actress. She's the first ever woman to win that award, Janet Gaynor. But not only for this film, but it was an award for her work in this film, Sunrise, in 1927's Seventh Heaven, and 1928's Street Angel, both directed by Frank Borzage. So, oh, and also there was a Best Cinematography Award Oscar that was given to Charles Rocher and Carl Struess, who filmed this. So, very successful film, and one that I kind of heard about. You know, I'd seen bits and pieces of like famous images from it, such as the man and the temptress looking out to this you know, double exposure shot of the city flying in front of them, and the shot with the man and his wife walking through the street. I'll get to that later on. But yeah, the film itself, I didn't get round to it until 2 years ago during my first silent movie marathon. I've since done a second one, and I'll be doing a third one this year as well. And it's when I really started to become a big fan of silent cinema. The first film I saw was Metropolis, or actually A Trip to the Moon as well. To me, they seem like maybe one-offs, you know, like the rare examples where a silent film was great. Then I saw Buster Keaton films. I thought, well, maybe this is, I mean, comedy can work very well in the visual sense. This is the first serious film I watched that is essentially a drama, a romantic drama, and I wasn't sure how I was going to receive it, but it just blew me away. It really did. The story, again, I'll tell you the story before we get to my reactions on the film, is about a man and his wife. They're not named in the film. They live in the country, and they have had better times in their relationship, and they've kind of let it slide. They have a young child, assuming it's a son. The sex is never revealed, but you know, when they're that young, you never know. But they got a young child together. They're not very happy together. They're not engaging with each other anymore. And we see at the beginning of the film people from the city going into the country for a break, you know, for a holiday. And this one woman from the city, she stays behind in the country to seduce the man away from his wife, with the aim of him selling his farm and coming back with her to the city. And she, I forget the actress's name, I should have checked it, but she is kind of the villain of the film. Again, the temptress, the prototypical vamp of this kind of, you know, silent era, the short black hair, the, you know, the seductress, you know, and she tries to lure him away from his wife. And the film is basically about him and his wife kind of reconnecting and finding their love for each other again, and it takes you through a roller coaster of emotions. And the title, A Song of Two Humans, couldn't be more appropriate. This film is very poetic to me. And one thing that I'll be talking about at the very end of the video, which will cover something that spoils an element of the film. I'm going to stay away from spoilers until the very end of each video, if I have any spoilers to give away. But all I'll say is the main hook of the film, for me anyway, the main hook that gets the plot going, to me when I first saw it, it threw me off. And if you've seen the film, you probably know what I'm talking about. I wasn't sure how to receive it. It seemed like it wasn't really very realistic. But as I watched the film, I realized this isn't really a realistic film. There's a heightened sense of reality to it. There's a hyper-realism to it. Not hyper-realism, or hyper-unrealism. There's, yeah, I mean, there's moments where you have these, you know, double exposure shots. There's a scene where he's sitting down on his bed and he's considering, you know, leaving his wife and stuff for this woman from the city. And her kind of ghostly image appears from behind him and wraps her arms around his chest, very kind of like trapping him and stuff. And it's like so perfectly done. I don't even know how they did it. I really don't. I'm sure I could look into it, but part of me doesn't want to. I don't want to ruin that magic. Just again, just the ghostly image of her, seeing things in different shots and all sorts of weird kind of special effects that you wouldn't expect to see in a melodramatic film from the silent era. Of course, now I've seen many other silent films and it was very common to have these double exposure effects, but when I first saw it, it blew me away. And it gives the film a more poetic sense than a kind of realistic drama. Again, I said the word hyper-realism, I meant kind of a hyper-surrealism. But, well, maybe that's going too far. But there are moments in the film where you can definitely see the elements of the German Expressionism style that Murnau has kind of brought over, like the sets. There's a bit of a skewed perspective. Things don't quite look like they do when you get to the city. Things are larger than life, and there's forced perspective sets and things like that. And they would use you know, small people at the way back in the back of the shot to make it appear like it's bigger than larger than life. So all these weird little things that definitely have that influence from the films that he was making in Germany and the films that other people were making in Germany in the silent era. In fact, I believe the people who did the production design for the film came with Murnau to come and do the sets and stuff for this film, or at least he requested they come over and do it. Again, can't remember the names, but I'm pretty sure that's the deal. And it gives the film a very unique look and an artistic look, unique and artistic, as the Oscar title goes to for this film. But yeah, that's the film, and I just was blown away by it because it made me happy to the point where I was beaming, which doesn't happen a lot. It made me sad to the point where I welled up. It made me fearful. It had me on the edge of my seat. It had me filled with disgust and mixed feelings, and the emotions that I got out of this film were just unparalleled. Like, I don't know, to me, it is one of the greatest films ever made, without a shadow of a doubt. It lives up to that hype of people saying it's one of the best films of all time. The performances are great. George O'Brien plays the man, the husband, and his transformation throughout the film is phenomenal to see unfold. His body language really sells it. At the beginning he seems like Frankenstein's monster, the way he carries himself, and then as the film goes on and progresses and it changes, you know, as the film goes into the middle and the end, you see these different sides to him, and it's a very striking performance. Then you have Janet Gaynor, who plays the wife. She's brilliant. She is one of my favourite actresses of all time. In fact, one of my favourite actors of all time. Forget gender. She is just phenomenal, and she's great in this. Really just portrays this kind of just pure unadulterated happiness at times that is just so infectious and wonderful to see. And then the sadness that she shows as well is heartbreaking. So the film really rests on these two actors' shoulders, but also in the direction and so on. The woman who plays the seductress, the vamp, she's very good too for her part in the film. But really, it's about the man and the wife, the man and the woman, the husband and wife, however you want to put it. And it's a wonderful story that's told, again, very poetically. It feels like a fable, almost fairy tale-esque, you know. Again, there's things, morally questionable things in the film, that you can only really get away with when the film is told in this kind of, again, poetic, song-like way. And the silent style of filmmaking back then certainly helped kind of add to that, I think. So that's my thoughts on the film. I'll talk about a spoiler at the end of the video, but now we're going to talk about the Blu-ray. Now, for every subsequent video in this series following, I will cut straight to a top-down view of me looking at the Blu-ray, showing you the cover, which I'm about to do with this one. But for now, I just wanted to let you know that every time I go to the Blu-ray, I'll be talking about the packaging, how it looks, how it sounds, running through some of the specifications, and then I'll talk about the special features. So let's take a look at the Blu-ray. Alright, so here's the Blu-ray. As you can see, really nice cover. I really love it. We've got the two main characters here in the front, and it feels like a scene from the city later on in the film. Really interesting design here with all the shapes. I really like it, and I believe it's an original movie poster. We've got the original 20th Century Fox logo down there in the corner, if you can see that. A film by F.W. Murnau, and of course the two lead actresses' names. It doesn't say A Song of Two Humans though, but still really nice, and it is the spine number 1, obviously, of the Massive Cinema collection on Blu-ray. There's the spine. It is a Blu-ray and DVD combo pack, whatever you want to call it. Double play, and it has 3 discs. So here's the back. We've got a summary of the film, some images on the right there, and then the special features, film restored, HD transfers of 2 different versions of the film, the movie tone and the Czech version, original English intertitles on the movie tone and optional English subtitles on the Czech version, and then you got the score information, full-length audio commentary, rare outtakes, a documentary on Four Devils, original theatrical trailer, and the booklet, which we'll look at in a second. Here's all the information and specs if you want to pause that and take a closer look. It tells you everything you need to know about you know, when it was released and all the aspect ratios, running times, and then a cast list there, and then all the usual logos on the back. So if we open it up, I mean, when I first got this and I opened it up, I just thought, wow, gorgeous artwork on this booklet here on the front. Just take a look at that for a second. Really nice poster. I love this one. This one has the Song of Two Humans subtitle, I guess you'd call it. William Fox presents the motion picture Sunrise. Just real classy feel to it. On the back we have the poster there. It's a little bit different in arrangement with the text than the front cover. So I don't know if it's been edited from this for the Blu-ray or vice versa, I don't know. On the inside we get all the credits and stuff like that. We have information about the world premiere of the film, where it premiered and all that kind of stuff, how it went, really cool stuff. Contents page, some images from the film, and yeah, really good. As always, Eureka, they put a fantastic amount of detail into these booklets and all the special features. This one is a little light, and I'll get onto that later, but it's still you know, a great, you know, just it ties the whole thing together, I think. And this, as always, they have notes on viewing. Of course, if you stretch the film to 16:9 widescreen on your TV, it would be the incorrect version of the film, so you need to have the black bars, the pillow box effect, and yeah, notes on the soundtracks as well. It's just really in-depth and informative stuff in the booklet. So we have the first DVD disc, number 1, with the movie tone version and the bonus features. Then we have the second DVD disc with the Czech version of the film plus the trailer, and then we have, of course, the Blu-ray of the film. Now, the Blu-ray looks spectacular. It looks brilliant. Again, I'll get into the Czech version in just a minute, but suffice it to say, the film looks brilliant, and that's the great thing about this, is that we get to see films that were released almost 100 years ago now in Blu-ray quality. I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned already, this was the has the distinction of being the first Blu-ray of a silent film ever released, I believe, in 2009. Again, can't remember if I went through this in the introduction, but quite a few of these early Massive Cinema titles were originally released in a standard blue case, and when they started re-releasing them in 2010, 2011, they did it with these clear cases, which is now the official look, I suppose. So yeah, anyway, there's a couple of different versions out there of these earlier titles, but all you're really missing is the fact that it's a blue case, as far as I'm aware. So Yeah, let's have a look at the inside as well. You'd see that. Should I take out the disc? I don't know whether it's worth it. I could just take out the Blu-ray, leave the swing tray in, and hold it up. There we go. Yeah, so you can kind of see. Move the disc out of the way and get a proper look at it. So that's a really cool shot of the fairground, all the attractions and stuff from the middle of the film. So a really nice shot there. And that's another cool thing, they always have stuff on the inside, whether it be chapter listings or just a nice image from the film. And there you go, that's the Blu-ray. Again, I'm no audiophile, or I don't know all these in-depth terms about transfers and crush blacks and all this kind of stuff, and color palette saturation bollocks. I'd love to be able to know what all that stuff is, but I just don't. So for me, all I can say is that the transfer looks brilliant. It sounds great. It sounds and looks like a silent film. Like there's scratches and stuff on the print, but that kind of goes along with it for me. It's kind of part of the appeal. It feels worn. It feels old and lived in and watched, and that's kind of, I don't know, maybe a little bit of the appeal. So there we go, that's the Blu-ray, and let's go on with my thoughts on the special features. Alright, so the special features. I feel like my hand is about to fall off, so I feel like I'm okay to put the Blu-ray down now. You've seen the case enough. The special features, as I just went through, I want to talk to you about them a little bit more in depth. First of all, the versions of the film. There's two versions presented in high definition, the movie tone version and the Czech version. The movie tone version is the American version of the film, runs at 93 minutes long, and it has all the original American intertitles, including a great one where a specific word kind of melts down the screen as it comes on. It's really symbolic, really cool. But the Czech version just has Czech subtitles, and there's a couple of effects there, but they're not as effective as the American version. So the Czech version was one that they sent out, obviously, to these all over the world, different versions with different languages and the intertitles, and it just so happens that the Czech print that exists is actually in better quality, in better shape than the movie tone version. So the Czech version is missing some scenes, it's some slightly different things going on there, but it's pretty much the same film. It's 79 minutes long, whereas the movie tone version is 93 minutes long, and the Czech version is also slightly wider. The aspect ratio is slightly wider. The movie tone version is presented in 120:1 aspect ratio, and the Czech version is in 137:1, a bit more wider, and you see a bit more of the image, and it looks phenomenal. Again, as I said earlier. But yeah, so you have two versions of the film. They're not really two cuts, but you have, there's a few differences in the Czech version, but it's really just great to watch the Czech version to see more of the image and to see, I think there's a few alternate shots in there, I'm not too sure. I'd have to check on that. Maybe I'll put a little post thing down below telling you if there are any alternate shots in it. But either way, it's just great seeing it in even better quality, and also having the wider aspect ratio, and they've kind of approximated the movie tone score to go along with that. With the movie tone version, we have the original score, but we also have another score, an alternate Olympic Chamber Orchestra score, and that one is, I've listened to some of it. I didn't watch the whole film with it, so I didn't really completely watch everything, but it was okay. I enjoyed bits of it, but I certainly prefer the way that the original movie tone score kind of soars and also brings in the dread and the dark side of it and stuff. So yeah, my preference is definitely the movie tone score. Then maybe I'll check out the Olympic Chamber Orchestra score at some point. Then we have a full-length audio commentary by cinematographer John Bailey on the movie tone version. This is an interesting one. I believe John Bailey is a cinematographer himself. In fact, I looked on his IMDb page, and it said that he had done the cinematography for The Way Back, which is a film from a couple of years ago, which is a really good film, and that surprised me. But anyway, I guess he's an American cinematographer who was very interested in the cinematography in this film. So the audio commentary is an interesting one. I enjoyed listening to it for sure, but it seems like he's kind of just going through the formalities. We're talking about the story in the film and the background of the production, and he's just waiting to talk about the cinematographers, about Charles Rocher and Carl Struess. He really seems like a big Carl Struess fan. I think he met him as well. He mentioned in the commentary, but he really wants to just talk about Carl Struess. And at certain points he'll be watching the film and he'll be saying, "Oh well, that boat obviously can't be rowed that fast," and "Oh, look at Janet Gaynor's awful wig. It just looks terrible," he definitely provides a lot of interesting background information on the film, but this is definitely a cinematographer's commentary, which I still found very interesting. Then we have rare outtakes, which is about 10 minutes of outtakes from the film presented in standard definition, where we see alternate shots. There's actually an alternate shot of the famous shot where we follow the man as he walks through the marsh towards the woman from the city. Amazing shot in the film, and there's a different, alternate, not quite as effective version in the outtakes. We see a very brief shot of F.W. Murnau directing Janet Gaynor and George O'Brien in the scene in the restaurant towards the end of the film. Some really cool little just alternate moments and stuff, and John Bailey also provides commentary over these outtakes as well, which is pretty interesting too. And then we have the original theatrical trailer, which is silent. There's no audio whatsoever, and it was really cool to see that and to see the kind of a trailer from the 20s, and to see the quotes coming up like, oh, perhaps the greatest film ever made, Sunrise, you know. And it seems interesting for someone to say, this is the greatest film that's ever been made, and you think, well, there's only been about 30 years of films up until that point, so, you know, that those statements become less and less bold or, you know, concrete when you get to, you know, 2016, where you can't say a new film, that's the greatest film ever made, and you're like, well, there's like 120 million, 1,000 films that have gone before this, whereas when Sunrise came out, there was loads of films, don't get me wrong, but it was still, the cinema was still fairly in an infant stage, I suppose, and so just seeing a statement like that, the greatest film ever made, you know, was kind of interesting for me anyway. When I watched the trailer, I just thought that was quite funny to see that in a trailer. And yes, we have the booklet, of course, which I will be talking about. I've kind of flicked through it and shown you some of it in the previous part of the video, but yeah, it's a decent booklet. They've definitely gotten a lot better with them. Again, remember, this is their first release, but it has the credits and it has notes on the film restoration, which are very interesting. Definitely worth a read, and tells you all about how this restoration came to be, and it also tells you the differences between the Movietone and Czech versions. And yes, actually, I was right. There are alternate takes in the Czech version, but there's not many from what I can understand, because when I watched it, I didn't notice that much difference. It was mainly editing and missing footage that kind of sets the Czech version apart from the Movietone version, and of course the fact that it looks a lot better. Well, not a lot better, but it looks, certainly there's more detail in the transfer, as I said already. Also, the alternate score is by Timothy Brock. I didn't mention that earlier. And we have the traditional notes on viewing page. But yeah, very nice booklet. You know, it's got some nice posters on it. There's nothing in depth on there, but again, this is before. Well, I'm not sure. I mean, they obviously released booklets and stuff with the DVDs, I'm assuming, with Massive Cinema. I'm not too sure, but I'm assuming that they've done. But this is the first Blu-ray, so I mean, they've done booklets that have 80 pages, 50 pages, 100 pages, you know, and in the bigger box sets there's 300-page books. But this one, it's a short 20-page one, but it's very good and well put together. So the special features on this, they're great. But then I realized something, and I only realized this a couple of weeks ago, and this is why this video has been delayed. When you open the booklet up, on the contents page at the bottom, there's a small little bit of writing there, and it says the following 3 files can be found on the DVD edition by placing the disc into a computer and examining the files. The original photoplay, Sunrise script by Carl Mayer with Murnau's handwritten annotations, and a Sunrise screenplay with inserts and shots list. So yeah, they actually included the script with the package. If you go on the DVD, pop it in your laptop, there it is. You can read the entire script, the actual typed script from Carl Mayer with F.W. Murnau's handwritten annotations on the script. And it was phenomenal to read, and I had to read it, so I read it. And it was a great experience, one I very much enjoyed. It was interesting to see the differences, and obviously to see where Murnau had looked at the script and gone, okay, I'm going to interpret that this way. And you can see he writes notes saying, okay, change this title to this. He should say this instead of that. And I've written some notes, so I'm going to read some of those now. A lot of the titles, again, he rewrote on the page, I just said that. One particularly clunky title, he just scrolled a question mark over it, which I thought was pretty funny because it did seem like not a very good piece of dialogue, and he just put a question mark next to it. Also interesting that his notes are in English. A few scenes play out quite differently, and in the final film have different elaborations or complete fabrications. Unsure where they've come from, would like to know. Like, you know, did Murnau go, okay, I'm going to do this instead, you know, and I'm gonna put this in the film, and you know, did he write that into it? Did he not? I'd love to know all the little details, but you can only know so much from films like this. But a lot of the script is just like writerly description. It feels like a novel sometimes. And also that it kind of directs the picture in a way. Carme has written, and now, soft fancy transition. You know, I love that. And now a soft fancy transition. You know, just come up with something that's soft and fancy. And sometimes the direction is the direction of the actual film. A lot of times it's just in-depth and kind of poetically put descriptions of the characters' inner feelings, which I'm assuming gave the actors a lot more to work with than just you know, dialogue. I'm assuming if they've read it and they could see what the character is supposed to be feeling as opposed to the writer's intention. And of course this was adapted from a book originally, and Carl Mayer wrote the screenplay. There's a hell of a lot of description that, if taken literally, would make the fairground sequence look like it was shot on acid. Such manic, rapid-fire visual cues that Murnau clearly knew to rein back on, because there was so much put into that fairground sequence. It was like, have this and that, and people here and people there, and like a bearded lady, and like all these attractions, and just lights everywhere, and it was just a bit too full on. You can definitely see where Murnau's like, well, let's just have some of that, you know, and not go too overboard with it. There's a scene on a merry-go-round that isn't in the film, with Janet Gaynor putting a random kid on her lap, which is a bit of a weird choice, and it seemed to me like it was too on the nose as a symbol of representing the happy family unit being back together again. Again, I have a suspect feeling that Murnau probably thought that was, again, a bit too on the nose. There's still key moments and ideas that come directly from the script, though. And it's mentioned in the audio commentary how it's possible some of the comedic scenes were included at the request of the studio. There's some scenes in it which feel out of a comedy, like the barbershop scene and the scene with the pig. So I'd love to know if that was from Murnau, if it was from Carl Mayer, like, you know, where did they kind of pop into the film? But some, you know, some good stuff. Again, scenes not in the script. The barbershop sequence is not in the script. The statue gag and the photographers is not in the script. The dancing scene is kind of in place of where the merry-go-round scene is in the script, and the drunken pig scene is not in the script. And that's an interesting one, because you see a pig drink wine and then fall all over the place, and it really bothers me if they actually made that pig get drunk. But I'm hoping that they just greased up the floor so that he could slip around a bit, and I'm sure that's probably what happened. And a couple of lines that I kind of noted from the script: the vamp snake-like towards the window. So there's a moment where the woman from the city is moving towards the window to see what's happening outside near the end of the film, and she really does move snake-like towards the window. It's a really cool moment where you read the script and you see that's been exactly transposed onto the screen by the actress. Just like a miracle, a voice told me versus I know these waters, I couldn't lose hope. Yes, that's something that's involved towards the end of the film. I don't know if I should give that away, but basically something is found at the end of the film, and in the script it's like, oh, it was a miracle, I just knew, you know. Whereas in the actual film it's like, well, I know where to find it, so, you know, I didn't lose hope and I found it, that kind of thing. So again, lots of different things, and also there's a continuity shot list at the end, 539 shots, but there's also, it's missing the second to last page, which was kind of disappointing, but there's two versions of it, and I think everything is there. I don't know anyone who probably has actually gone onto the DVD and read the script, but I did, and I had an immensely enjoyable experience doing it. So that's my thoughts on the special features of Sunrise. An incredible package, great value for money, and yeah, just a great presentation of extra material for the film. Now we're going to talk about my final thoughts. Alright, so my final thoughts, before I get to that, I have to kind of let the cat out of the bag on this one. You might have noticed, if you have this and you've seen everything on it, and you might have even, you know, I've talked about it earlier in the special features, reading them out, I haven't covered everything, because this is only the first part of this video. Yes, there will be a part 2 to this video. I'm not sure what I'll call it yet, maybe number 1B or number 1 part 2, but there will be another part to this, because there is special features on this that relate to F.W. Murnau's lost film, Four Devils, and I want to give that film, that lost film, its own video. I don't want this video to be like super long, and there's a lot I want to say about it. So stay tuned for that next part, where I'll finish kind of rounding up everything on this package, but also talking about in depth his film Four Devils, which I'm really excited to start talking about. Anyway, my final thoughts on the film. It is wonderful. I get to spoilers at the very end. The direction by F.W. Murnau is just incredible. It really, really is. The lighting, the cinematography, obviously that's down to people like Charles Rocher and Carl Struess, but the way that he puts films together is so visually interesting and adds so much to films, and this one is just one of those examples for me. Symbolism in the film is wonderful, and just again these effects that some people wouldn't think to do and to put into a film like this. There's some of it in the script, but not all of it. You know, Murnau, I mean, there's again that famous shot where the man and the wife, they get lost in each other again, and they walk across a busy street, a busy road in the city, and they're kind of holding each other and looking into each other's eyes, and they're lost in themselves and each other. Nothing else in the world matters, and they're walking across this road. Cars are racing by in front of them, behind them, and then the road and the city fade away into a meadow, and they're walking towards the symbolized idea, the visual cue that kind of represents the happier times that they had. You know, when they first were together, when they were first so in love. It's a beautiful shot, but it's incredible how they did it. They filmed it against a black background, and everything is kind of, it's all these brilliant effect. Was it necessary? Maybe not, but the fact that they pushed it is what's brilliant. I think that's where you get some of these genius moments where you do something that you don't need to do to represent this idea. But if you do it, it makes it more special if you can pull it off, and they pulled it off. I mean, obviously you can see around the edges that that there's different elements cut in and out and stuff. You can kind of see the outline around George O'Brien and Janet Gaynor's heads, but it's just such a pure expression of that moment that it worked. Again, that's one of the things I think that Murnau does wonderfully, is really expresses a feeling and an idea with just the visual. I mean, again, you got them acting, they're walking, looking into each other's eyes. That's, you know, there's a performance there, but it's the visual that really sells it, that really drives it home. And yeah, it's great. Also, one thing I forgot to mention was that actually they do have names in the script. The man's name is Ansas, and the woman's name is Indra. And you can actually see when you watch the film, when he's calling for her, he's calling Indra, and when someone calls for him, they're shouting, Ansas! And I thought that was a really cool little thing after I'd read the script to see, so they did actually film it with the names. But when it was released in the final version, it was just the man, the woman, and I like that because again it lends itself more to that kind of fairy tale-esque kind of just a story of a man and a woman, you know, and their love and it being tested and, you know, brought back together, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, final thoughts, 10 out of 10 film, absolutely fantastic, and I'll give you my final thoughts and rating on this Blu-ray in the second part of the video. Now, the only thing I want to talk about in terms of spoilers was, again, if you don't want to be spoiled, if you haven't seen the film and you're going to go check it out, turn off the video now. If you don't care or you've already seen the film, then you can stick around. Otherwise, thank you for watching and stay tuned for the next part. It's the part where, again, the central hook of the film is that the woman from the city wants the man to drown his wife. You know, he's like, well, I can't sell my farm and go to you with the city when I've got a wife. And she's like, well, she could drown. And so, I mean, that's where just it really grips you. But at the same time, I was thinking when I first watched it, why would he even consider this? And after he tries to almost kill her, how could she ever take him back? And again, she really sells the horror of that when they go into that cafe and she just can't even, she's trying to eat the bread and just tears roll. She can't believe what her husband, the love of her life, has almost done to her, right? But again, you have to view this as a fable, kind of fairy tale-esque, this kind of slight surrealism. It's not completely true to life, and again, with the visual style, I think that really complements it, and it makes it work for me once I realised what this film was really all about. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about in terms of spoilers. I've left a link in the bottom of this video description to an Amazon page to buy this if you're interested in it, and I'll be totally straight up about it. It's a really cool little program where if you buy this through the Amazon link in the description of this video, then Amazon will kick back like a few pennies to me, and again, it doesn't change anything about the way you're ordering it or add any charge whatsoever, and then in like 6 months time I'll be able to buy another one and do another video like this if you enjoy them. So I think everyone's a winner. So yeah, I'll put that down in the description below. But otherwise, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this first installment of the Massive Cinema Marathon, And yeah, stay tuned for part 2. I don't know what I'm going to call it yet, number 1, part 2, number 1B, but there are actually quite a few titles in the collection that have multiple films, so I'm going to have to do multiple parts to some of these spine numbers. But yeah, that was it for Sunrise, and I'll round everything up Sunrise related in the next video. I'll see you then. And again, I'm not putting this reaction on. I don't know how it's coming across, but again, just the range of emotions I'm feeling through this. It just really goes to show you how powerful a film can be, whether it's silent or not, you know. Ah, man, that was something. Well, it is. It's still not finished yet, but it's some really funny moments in this as well. No.